This past Labor Day weekend, I went down to a small town in Virginia. Went to a little ice cream shop to get ice cream. It was delicious. And on the TV, with the couches all around, they were playing Newsmax. And I thought it was kind of surprising. I'm like, wow, they're playing Newsmax of all places. You know, it's not something you normally see. But of course, it was a more religious place, and the town itself was particularly conservative. On the TV, it mentioned something about the left constantly talking about civil war. And I started laughing, and I'm like, does the right not realize what's happening? Or are they so tribal, at least at these networks, that they're going to act like we aren't careening full speed towards a civil war, or that we may actually be in one, or at the very least, a precursor to one? I'm seeing Fox News and other right-wing outlets be like, oh, the left is obsessed with this idea of civil war. And I'm like, dude, have you not been paying attention to what they're doing to the former president, Donald Trump? Going to his house, the raid, the constant lies in the media. It's been going on for years. The question is, are Democrats trying to make a civil war, or is Joe Biden, for example, a bumbling moron who's walking towards it unintentionally? That is to say, is this going to be a villainous mustache twirling, we are going to destroy this country? Or is it a Mr. Magoo of Joe Biden just haphazardly walking and falling off a cliff? We have this story from the Daily Mail. Biden gives MAGA Republicans a new name, Trumpies. Trumpies, okay. And calls Heckler an idiot who is destroying democracy. President launches latest attack on extreme right in Wisconsin Labor Day speech. Well, bravo, good sir. In this speech, a man starts yelling at Joe Biden. People then grab the man. Uh-oh. You shouldn't grab people. That's illegal. That is assault and battery. I don't know about Wisconsin, but in Illinois it would be. And then Biden starts yelling, no, let him go, let him go, let him go. I think it's the Daily Mail, but some of these outlets are like, he was saying, let him go to security. And I'm like, dude, no. In the video, it's people in the crowd grabbing the heckler. But Joe Biden then says of the heckler, they embrace political violence. It's like, while your guys are grabbing a dude who's yelling. Yeah, conservatives, Trump supporters, moderates, liberals, etc., do not embrace political violence and routinely speak out against it. Now, there may be some people who align this with Trump and all that, of course, who embrace violence. A lot of people say stupid things on the internet. But overwhelmingly, you see every step of the way denunciation of the violence. I mean, we hear over at Timcast more centrist libertarians, not like the left can really tell, to be completely honest, but we routinely rag on violence. And all of our guests do, even conservatives, because you're like 2 months away from winning the House and potentially the Senate and getting subpoena power against your political rivals, which is the legal process by which you can get accountability. And any act of violence at this point would just weaken you, because people need to understand. You know, obviously there are some people who want to get violent, but those people are dumb. They're wrong. And that's why I point out every time when Black Lives Matter started protesting after the death of George Floyd, support for them peaked over 50% in this country. People were supporting it. Even conservatives were on board like, yeah, that was wrong. And then came the riots. And after the riots, support for Black Lives Matter dropped down to like 9% in net. Meaning it was actually like 30 or 40% or something like that. I don't know what the difference, you know. But they were at, like, the net approval was something like 28%, meaning like over median. And then it dropped down to like 9% or something. It went negative, actually, I think. I've pulled up the stats. But they lost all of the gains they had made that year. Doesn't work. Joe Biden, I think it's kind of hilarious when he says they embrace political violence, which is an outright and overt lie. This is, my friends, of course, extreme stochastic terrorism. At least that's what the left has been saying of Donald Trump. Donald Trump recently called out and said Biden is an enemy of the state. I think it's funny because Biden is basically the head of state right now, but sure, whatever, Trump. You see, when Trump says something like this, they say it's stochastic terrorism. And what is that? It's a ridiculous term that means if you criticize someone else might hurt that person, therefore it's your fault. Oh, shut up. It's not true of the left or the right. If I come out and say Biden's dumb as crap or whatever, that's not stochastic terrorism. If I say he's evil, that's not. But that's what they're doing. Donald Trump comes out and he's like, this Joe Biden is evil. He's bad for this country. And they're like, that's stochastic terrorism, because now what's going to happen is someone's going to hear that and then go commit an act of violence and it was Trump's fault. No, you're allowed to criticize people and call them things. Joe Biden is, Donald Trump is. But if they're going to play that game, then I will assert this. By their standard, Joe Biden is engaged in stochastic terrorism. When he comes out and says they embrace political violence, which they don't, how many people do you think are going to be like, we better start fighting them, otherwise they'll engage in violence first? That's the idea. And we've seen it with Antifa. And the reason why I think the stochastic terrorism label applies more to Joe Biden than it would to Trump is because Biden's staffers helped bail out extremist rioters. Kamala Harris herself helped bail out extremist rioters, posting saying, please give money. People who had been arrested for very serious crimes, they assisted. So when they help those people, when they cheer that on, and when Antifa and BLM riots resulted in the death of like 30 people in just in 2020, and then they come out and they're like, but they're the bad ones. Okay, fine. We'll play your game. Stochastic terrorism. That's your label. The Daily Mail reports President Joe Biden rolled out a new nickname for MAGA Republicans on Labor Day. During a lively speech, is that what you call it? During his speech, he called them Trumpies, blah, blah, blah. At one point, Biden was interrupted by a heckler, though he told Secret Service to let him go. Everybody's entitled to be an idiot, the president said to scattered laughter. And despite clarifying early on that not every Republican is a MAGA Republican, he later painted the critic and his ilk as working to destroy democracy. You see, this is this is a psychotic game. Joe Biden's like, these MAGA Republicans are an extremist threat to this country. And then you're like, okay, what does that mean? You know, MAGA Republicans. Are you talking about Trump supporters? Then he comes out when Ducey asks him, and he goes, oh, I'm not talking about Trump supporters. Then you get a guy in the crowd, and he's like, that guy wants to destroy democracy. And it's like, dude, he's saying two things at the same time. He's not talking about Trump supporters, but he is. Fine. The biggest, and they say, quote, he says, the biggest contrast from what MAGA Republicans, the extreme right, the Trumpies, is these MAGA Republicans in Congress are coming for your Social Security as well. What? It's like the stupidest thing ever said. It's like random spattering of words. Later at a second event in Pittsburgh, Biden tore into MAGA once again, saying of Trump, it's clear which way he wants to look. It's clear which way the new MAGA Republicans are, calling them very extreme. You can't call yourself a democracy when you don't count the votes that people legitimately cast, Biden said. He also, and the funniest thing is, you have this narrative battle between the Democrats and the Republicans where the hardcore Trumpies, as Biden calls them, repeatedly say that the election was stolen or something like that. And Joe Biden repeatedly comes out with the complete inverse, but also very heavy, count the votes that were legitimately cast, free and fair elections. And I'm like, ugh, guys, politics has always been a battle of lawfare. You know what I mean? Like, and this is my point about when people come out talking about voter fraud and stuff. I'm like, this is not new. And they're like, they cheated. I'm like, dude, there's legal processes. People seek to exploit legal processes. But a lot of what we saw was just that. And that's what 2020 was. The universal mail-in voting, going door to door, all of that stuff really did help Democrats get these votes and win. And if Republicans refuse to steelman their opponent, which Donald Trump does, you'll see a repeat of the Georgia special election. And the Democrats will win. You need to steelman. You need to put your opponent in the strongest position possible. Call it whatever you want. The position they're in is they've got people who are voting. They are using universal mail-in voting to get a ton of votes. It's a huge benefit to Democrats. Anyway, I don't want to. I hate getting into all that stuff. It's so stupid. Quote, if I have to be in a foxhole, I want John Fetterman in there with me. Tell you what, I want John in there with me. I mean that sincerely, Biden said of Fetterman, who has been in a campaign brawl with Trump-backed candidate Dr. Mehmet Oz. You know, I got to tell you guys, you can criticize Fetterman all you want. I don't like the Democratic Party and I don't trust them. But Fetterman is absolutely trouncing Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz is running an abysmal campaign. And I would almost speculate it was on purpose, like they're sabotaging on purpose. Democrats are supposed to lose right now. That's the historical trend. The first term of a presidency, a particularly bad one with bad economic indicators, should predict Republicans winning. And then you get Oz? Come on, man. The 79-year-old leader has ratcheted up his rhetoric against the former president and his allies in recent days. It was at a private event with donors that the president compared MAGA Republicans' beliefs to semi-fascism, earning instant backlash from all factions on the right. Walking those comments back on Monday, said, I want to be very clear up front. Not every Republican is a MAGA Republican. Not every Republican embraces that extreme ideology. But the extreme MAGA Republicans in Congress have chosen to go backwards, full of anger, violence, hate, and division. I'm so sick of these psychotic, evil cultists. I will explain in great detail. Antifa and BLM went around smashing, destroying, and quite literally killing people. Aaron Danielson was shot twice in the chest. You do not have the comparable stories from the quote-unquote MAGA Republicans. Matt Gaetz is not cheering these things on. Rand Paul is not going around and cheering these things on. The Republicans are not donating to Proud Boys to such a degree, and the Proud Boys react, and they're reactionary, so-called the left. They show up, or they did, to leftist events when the left was getting violent. The Proud Boys weren't holding rallies where they would go out and go around smashing windows and starting fires like Antifa and BLM. While I'm no big fan, it is just very clear when Biden comes out and says that MAGA Republicans are full of anger, violence, hate, and division. Sure, hate and division, anger, fine. Opinions. Hate and division, whatever. Anger, fine. Violence, wrong. That's you, and they're projecting. And it's funny. I take a look at what's going on with a lot of these policies pertaining to energy policies. People are dying. Joe Biden shuts down. He bans some fracking. He shuts down Keystone, severely limiting, our fossil fuel industry. I should say, let's just say limiting. Let's keep the editorialization to a minimum. So he's making it harder to produce energy. In Italy, Germany, people are upset. They're protesting because the energy prices are so high. I saw a video. People in Italy are using candles because the cost of electricity is so high. Candles are cheaper. Is that one way to live? Well, I look at that and I'm like, well, people will die from that. And they are. There's going to be a lack of food. The Netherlands, second largest exporter of food I believe in the world, is having their ability to produce limited by the government at a time, by the Dutch government, at a time when we're facing a food shortage. I'm like, death and death. That's the result of this. Then you've got the sterilization of children and the abortion. And I'm like, man, I can certainly understand why everyone's talking about these population reduction conspiracies. I'll tell you what, that seems to be everything they're pushing forward. And then, of course, you have their overt violence. They're a death cult. That's it. They're in a death cult. The left comes out and calls MAGA a death cult. And for what reason? Because many of them didn't want to get the vaccine. When you had people like Pete Parada go to his doctor and his doctor was like, you suffer from Guillain-Barré syndrome, sir. I recommend against this. And he went, oh, gee, thanks, doc. They called him an anti-vaxxer because they're in a cult. It's like, dude, a death cult is not when you go to your doctor and say, give me the best advice, doc. A death cult is when you pull up into a parking lot and have a random guy inject you with a substance, right? I suppose that's the argument they want to make. I'll make the inverse argument. Ultimately, though, you talk to your doctor, right? That's what I did. My doctor prescribed me some medications that YouTube will ban you for if you talk about, and I didn't want. But I got to take the advice of my doctor. And so when you get people who do, they call you an anti-vaxxer. Why? Because they're in a cult. A cult tells you to ignore your doctor. I mean, this is the funniest thing. I know a lot of people rag on YouTube about their policies and everything, and I'm like, they're not as bad as you think, but they're bad. They are bad, don't get me wrong. They're very censorious. But a lot of people think it's like mustache twirling villainy. And I'm like, dude, you need to look at the rules and think about how it applies to the left. No, hold on. I didn't say that they don't shield the left. They do. I'm just pointing out that it's kind of funny because the pie is being thrown in the left's face. One of the rules on YouTube is that you can't discourage people from going to their doctor. And anything else is particularly irrelevant. It's just don't discourage people from going to their doctor. And I actually agree with that. Some people then say, but the doctors are wrong, Tim. And I'm like, dude, if your doctor's wrong, get a better doctor. Like if I hired a plumber and the plumber started hammering my driveway, I'd be like, what are you doing? And he didn't have a good, I'd get somebody else. If you go to a doctor gives you bad advice, you get a better doctor. But so the left are the ones that came out and criticized me for saying that. Yeah, I think they're a death cult. I was talking to someone and I said, somebody tweeted that you should just go get vaccinated. They said, go get vaccinated right now. And I said, go talk to your doctor about what's right for you. And then they all yelled at me and they called me an anti-vaxxer. And I was like, what? What do you think the doctor's going to say to you? Cult. It's a cult. I was like, I thought that was the safe position for everybody. Because my attitude was this. Look, if you go to the doctor and it turns out you have Guillain-Barré syndrome, and your doctor recommends against it. That's the smart thing, right? Because what we don't want are people getting injured or sick because of underlying health conditions and then blaming it on the vaccine. That was my attitude. And I'm like, that's why you just talk to your doctor, minimize risk, minimize negative press, all of that stuff. But as a death cult, the left told me I was wrong. And I'm like, okay, I really don't get whatever, man. While all this is going on, and there is talk of civil war and death cults, you have Trump calling Biden an enemy of the state, which I don't think helps. Trump is also demanding to be reinstated, which I really don't think helps. Fine. Trump, if you want to be reinstated, that means you're not running again in 2024, whatever. If you're claiming that you are the rightful president, well, then you don't get another term, do you? I suppose the argument would be that his term was taken from him and that he would be reinstated and given a full 4 years or whatever, but the Daily Mail reports Trump says he should be reinstated as president again. Insists FBI and DOJ have been caught in an election rigging scam. Okay, let's hold on there a minute. Right now in the midterms, I think it's fair to say that by the FBI's own standard, they're interfering in the election. They claimed, according to whistleblowers, they could not investigate the Hunter Biden laptop because that would interfere in the 2020 election. Right now, they're issuing subpoenas. They're raiding people, raiding Donald Trump, getting search warrants or whatever. Yeah, that sounds like interference by their standard. Donald Trump says he should be reinstated as president. Okay, dude, look, the FBI investigated Hillary Clinton's emails, and many people believe that really did hurt her in the 2016 election. I didn't see you come out and say nothing about that, all right? I didn't see you come out and criticize. In fact, people came out. I'm not gonna sit here and play this game of whataboutism or whatever. The reality is, right now, Donald Trump has declassification powers. They're now saying that those folders they showed, they were empty. There was nothing in them, so they were declassified nothings. But they want to make it look like Trump actually did something wrong, I guess. I mean, there still were classified documents. Don't get me wrong. But they're playing this game of what I see as pure election interference. Donald Trump coming out and saying that they've been caught, and because of that, he should be reinstated is just, okay, fine, whatever. I'll put it down. Let's break it down this way. We're in a civil war. Decorum and logic are irrelevant. All that matters now is who can win. Fine. Then I'll tell you this. You must vote in the midterms. We are no longer in this world of occupying buildings to maintain political power. It's not the 1600s. People, Hitler tried this. I'm not comparing today to Germany. I'm saying the beer hall push. He goes into a Munich beer hall and he's like, we're in control now. And people are just like, no, you're not. And he's like, what? And then he got arrested. And then what did he do? He was like, okay, I have to actually win. Because even someone as stupid as that guy realized you can't just go into a place and declare yourself, chancellor or whatever. He won through political means, through elections. Terrifying. And that's what we see with right now the Democrats and the Republicans. Of course, the Democrats are going to be the ones to claim the Republicans are actually the Nazis or whatever, and the right's going to complain the left are the Nazis or whatever. For the most part, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. I'm not going to say they're like Nazis. They're fascistic in many ways, the Democrats. Joe Biden lying, all of this crap. Here's what needs to happen. You need to go out and vote. Put on your blinders, get your tunnel vision on, look straight ahead. Knock on doors. You should be registering voters right now. You should be following Scott Pressler and taking his lead, registering voters. Come November, if we get a red wave, we need the Senate and the House. And it's got to be the MAGA Republicans that Biden hates so much. Then come January 3rd or 5th or whenever what's the word? Give orientation to these members of Congress and inaugurate them into office. Then we can start seeing the hammer drop. We can start seeing some investigations, some inquiries when you gain subpoena power. That's the way this thing needs to be done. It needs to be done this way. Now, unfortunately for the Democrats, they actually don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to these investigations, but they're doing the sham January 6th here with non-adversarial garbage. If the Republicans can get inquiries into Joe Biden's illicit business dealings overseas using his son as a proxy, we can maybe make some real moves towards impeachment. And in fact, you know what? Just out of the gate, Republicans might just impeach Joe Biden. Unfortunately, the Republican Party is full of a bunch of feckless uniparty shills, so I'm not entirely sure that will happen. But that's why you need to vote. That's why the primaries were so important. And that's why Donald Trump's what is it, a 99% success rate? It might be 92 in his endorsements. He's powerful. Now, maybe Dr. Oz won't win, whatever. I don't think Dr. Oz is all that great. But you need to win one Senate seat. One. Defend the ones you got, win one, and that's all it takes. Joe Biden will block and veto a lot of things. But with the House, you will get subpoena power and investigatory power. And that's what needs to happen. So right now, as you have Joe Biden lying about MAGA Republicans and Donald Trump calling Joe Biden the enemy of the state, perhaps you should realize that right now, two of the leaders of each party are pointing the finger at each other and screaming evil. I don't know about you, but my reading of history suggests these things don't end well. MSNBC came out and said civil war. Okay. And now all of a sudden I'm seeing people on the right be like, oh, the left is obsessed. They want this. And I'm just like, what? Are you just saying that because the left is saying it now? Spare me, dude. We are in dark days indeed. And if you don't pay attention to where we're going, then you'll be left holding an empty bag. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.